everyone. Punctuation marks are very important for all types of writing, if that is academic writing or non-academic writing, if that is technical writing or non-technical writing, if that is report writing or essay writing, if that is formal writing or informal writing. So in all types of writing, we use punctuation marks. In this lecture, you will learn colon. Let's begin our today's lecture. So this is the symbol of colon. So what is colon? A colon means that is to say, or here is what I mean. So it means here what I mean or that is to say. Colons and semicolon should never be used interchangeably. So these are two different punctuation marks. You can't replace colon with semicolon or semicolon with colon, right? Now here we will discuss rule number 1 for the use of colon. Use a colon to introduce a series of items. Do not capitalize the first item after the colon unless it is a proper noun. So that is rule number 1. We use a colon to introduce a series of items to mean that is to say or what I mean. Remember, for a series of items, right? And then it is said they do not capitalize the first item after the colon. You will use not a capital letter unless and until you are using a proper noun after a colon. For example, you may be required to bring many things, right? Sleeping bags, pants, utensils, and warm clothing. You can see that sleeping bag, that's a common noun. So I did not capitalize this S here, right? And here we have pens, so I did not capitalize, right? So these all nouns are not capitalized. So what are these things? These are items. You see, introduce a series of items. And it means that is to say or here what I mean. You may be required to bring many things. That is to say or what I mean. For example, sleeping bags, pants, utensils, and warm clothing. So here I use what? Colon. You can see. Now I want the following items: butter, sugar, and flour. You can see butter, sugar, and flour. Series of items. And this colon, it means that is to say, or here what I mean. And I need an assistant who can do the following. For example, input data, write report, and complete text form. Again, we have mentioned here a series of items. What a person can do. Input data, right? He is expert or skillful, right? To put data, okay, or input data. Write report and complete text form. So this is rule number 1. Now on this slide, we will discuss rule number 2 for colon. Avoid using a colon before a list when it directly follows a verb or preposition. So you cannot use what? You cannot use a colon before a list, right? A list of items when it directly follows a verb or preposition. For example, it would be incorrect. I want. So want is what? It's a verb. You can't say that I want and then colon butter, sugar, and flour. This is incorrect sentence, right? So correct would be that I want the following: butter, sugar, and flour. So after preposition or after a verb, we cannot mention like a list of items, or we cannot put also a colon, right? Or I want butter, sugar, and flour. So if you want to use a verb, I want, then I want butter, sugar, and colon. No need of colon here, right? I want butter, sugar, and flour. So if you want to mention series of items after the verb, no need of colon, right? And if you're using like a complete sentence, right, you have a noun, you have an adjective, right, then you can put a colon and you can mention a series of items, right? Now rule number 3 for colon. When listing items one by one per line following a colon, capitalizations and ending. Now, punctuations are optional when using single words or phrases preceded by letters, numbers, or bullet point. If each point is a complete sentence, capitalize the first word and end the sentence with appropriate ending punctuation. Otherwise, there are no hard and fast rule except be consistent, right? So what it say that when listing items one by one, okay, you have item and you are listing one by one. This is one, this is two, this is three, this is four, right? Or you are mentioning item per line. In one line you are mentioning one types of item, and the second line you are mentioning second type of item, and in the third line you are mentioning third type of item. So following a colon, you will use a colon. For example, you can say that we require the following, and then you put a colon, and then you say A, right? Under the A heading you mention something, then you say B, you mention something, you say C, and you mention something. So it says okay in the same way. So what about like a capitalization, capitalizations and ending? You will use capitalize. You will need to capitalize a letter, or also you will have a proper ending. Proper ending means you have to put a full stop or period. Now, punctuations are optional when using single words or phrases. For example, if you say that we need the following, okay, or we need the following items, and then you put a colon. And if you put like in one a words or phrases, so then capitalizations are optional. You may capitalize the first letter, you may not capitalize. You may put a full stop and you may not put a full stop if you are mentioning the items and words or phrases preceded by letters, right? For example, you have A, B, and C. Suppose, right, that you said you want to make a demand for a computer or for laptop, right? And you say that we need the following items or we need the following laptops, and then you put a colon. And A you write mentioning, and then B you mention, and then C you mention. And if you are mentioning in words or phrases, so no need to capitalize the first letter and no need to put a full stop, right? Number or bullet point. I'll give example on next slide. If each point is a complete sentence, if each point is a complete sentence, capitalize the first word and end the sentence with appropriate ending punctuation. Otherwise, there are no hard and fast rule except be consistent. I'll give example now. Now here we have examples where list of items are put one by one or per lines. Example, I want an assistant who can do the following. You can see that a colon is used here, and that is one by one. Input data, A, letter A is here, and input data, letter B, write reports, and letter C, complete text form. So you can see that these like different items which are put one by one, and they are like in phrase. Input data, it's a phrase, and write reports also a phrase, not a complete sentence. And complete text form, again, it's not a complete sentence. So you have option here. You can capitalize the first letter, right? You can put here a comma or period, whatever comes. You can capitalize, right, this W, and you can put here ending, but it is optional, right? You can put, or if you don't want, you cannot capitalize and you cannot put an ending here. Second, the following are requested. You can see here colon is used here, and wool sweaters for possible cold weather, right? And then wetsuit for snorkeling, and introduction to the local dignitaries. You can see here that the first letter in wool, W is capitalized, and here we have a full stop. And here W is capitalized, and here we have a full stop or period. And here I is capitalized, and in dignitaries, here we have a full stop. So you have option here, right? You can see there is in bullet wool sweaters for possible cold weather. It's not like a complete sentence. And wetsuit for snorkeling. It's not a complete sentence. And introduction to the local dignitary. So it's not a complete sentence. So these are also not complete sentences, and these are also not complete sentences. But here the first letter in these words are not capitalized, and no punctuation mark is used at the end. And here we can see that the first letter is capitalized, and here also full stop. So you have option here. But if you are putting like the items in full sentences, then you should capitalize the first letter and a period. For example, these are the pool rules. First, do not run is a complete sentence, imperative. And if you see unsafe behavior reported to the lifeguard, it's a complete sentence. And did you remember your towel is a complete sentence. And have a fun is a complete sentence, right? Have a fun is a complete sentence. So you can see that if you are putting items in complete sentence, so the first letter, it must be capitalized, and there should be appropriate ending to that item also. So I hope you got it, okay? Because here we explain, and here I gave you example. Now rule number 4, a colon. Instead, a semicolon may be used between independent clauses when the second sentence explains, illustrate, paraphrase, or expand on the first sentence, right? So it means that if we have two independent clauses, right, and the second sentence illustrate, paraphrase, or expand on the first sentence, so then we use colon. We don't use a semicolon. For example, he got what he worked for. And this is the explanation or illustration of the first sentence, right? That he really earned that promotion. We can see that here is a colon. We don't put a semicolon here. This is a rule. And if a complete sentence follows a colon, as in the previous example, like in this one, it is up to the writer to decide whether to capitalize the first word, although generally advisable capitalization a sentence after a colon is often a judgmental call, right? So it's optional whether you capitalize this H in he or not. But if you capitalize, so that would be a judgmental call. Note, a capital letter generally does not introduce a simple phrase following a colon, right? For example, that he got what he worked for. So that is a promotion. That's what say that a capital letter generally does not introduce a simple phrase following a colon. If you have a colon, right? And after a colon, you are using a phrase. So the first letter then is not capitalized. You can see that a promotion is here, right? Rule number 5. Here we have rule number 5. A colon may be used to introduce a long quotation. Some styles, manuals say that it entails 1/2 inch to both the left and right margins. Others say to entail only on the left margin. Like quotation marks are not used. Fine, quotation marks are not used. Example that the author of Touched, Jane Strauss, wrote in the first chapter. You can see a colon here. And Georgia went back to her bed and stares at the intricate pattern of burned moth wings in the translucent glass of the overhead light. You can see here that a colon is used. Fine. And then we do not use like quotation mark here. Fine. And then her father was in hyper mood, again where nothing could calm him down. So that is a long quotation, right? That's why that a colon is used, but no quotation marks are used. Inverted commas are used here. And here we have the last rule, that is rule number 6 for colon. Use of colon. Use a colon rather than a comma to follow the salutation in a business letters, even when addressing someone by his or her first name. Never use a semicolon after a salutation. So a comma is used after a salutation in more informal correspondence. You can use a comma after a salutation, that is informal correspondence. And if it is a formal correspondence like a business letter, so we use a colon, not a semicolon or comma. For example, you can see that it's a formal way. The dear Mrs. Rodriguez. You can see that a colon is used after dear Miss Rodriguez, right? And you can see that in formal, there dear Dave. So after dear Dave, a comma is used. So in informal correspondence, you can put a comma. But in formal correspondence or in business letter, we put a colon. You can see that dear Miss Rodriguez, right? Instead, these names, Dave and Rodriguez, you can use local names. For example, dear Miss Leila or dear Miss Gulwareen. If you are writing a business letter or that is a formal one, put a colon. And if you are writing an informal letter, informal note, then you put a comma and say dear Ali or dear Ahmed. So thank you so much. These were some of the rules that were to use colon as a punctuation mark. So please don't forget to subscribe and like the channel, and to have more informative lectures and videos related to linguistics and literature, as well as grammar and spoken language. Thank you so much.